Welcome to Midnight Motives, the place where every shadow has a story and every story has a motive. Here we step into the darkest corners of true crime, the cases that keep investigators awake, the killers who hide in plain sight, and the mysteries that linger long after the world has moved on. At Midnight Motives, we don't just tell the story, we unravel it. Piece by piece, clue by clue, motive by motive. If you're drawn to the unexplained, the unsettling, and the truth buried beneath the layer of lies, you're exactly where you should be. Turn down the lights, settle in, because after midnight, nothing is what it seems. The List family murders. The man who disappeared for 18 years. On a quiet street in Westfield, New Jersey, a beautiful Victorian mansion once held a secret so dark it left an entire community frozen with fear. Inside that house, on November 9th, 1971, an entire family vanished from public life and no one knew why. The man responsible? Their father, a respected accountant, a Sunday school teacher, and a devout Lutheran. His name? John Emil List. And after committing one of the most chilling family annihilations in American history, he simply disappeared for 2 decades. The perfect family. John List seemed the picture of middle-class success: an accountant, a husband, a father of three: Patricia, John Jr., and Frederick. His elderly mother, Alma, who also lived with the family. His wife, Helen, was secretly suffering from syphilis she'd contracted from a previous marriage, something List kept hidden from almost everyone. Unfortunately, the disease caused neurological decline, instability, and heavy drinking. Money was running out. John had lost job after job because of his cold, rigid personality, but he refused to tell his family. He continued leaving the home every morning, pretending to go to work. Like, just every single day, he'd just leave the house and pretend to go to work, as if there was nothing going on. And it's insane that, like, his family could, like, like, I mean, some people are just really good at, like, hiding what they're doing, but for me, if, like, the person that I was with would just leave and, like, they were bringing no money in, I'd be like, "Where's the money from your job? Like, how are we going to pay bills?" But anyway, financial ruin, religious pressure, and a family turmoil was closing in. On the morning of November 9th, John List put his plan into motion. He walked into the kitchen, banged his wife, Helen, in the back of the head. Then he climbed the stairs to the third floor and killed his mother, Alma, with a single bullet. One by one, he waited for his children to come home from school. Patricia arrived first, his 16-year-old daughter who dreamed of being an actress. Then Frederick, he killed both. Later that evening, his eldest son, John Jr., came home from soccer practice. John Jr. fought back but unfortunately died after multiple shots. List then lined the bodies of Helen and the children in sleeping bags in the ballroom. He made himself dinner, cleaned the crime scene, wrote letters explaining his actions, then turned every light in the mansion on, hoping they'd burn for weeks to ward off suspicion. How, like, like his poor wife and kids, like they had no idea what was going on. He just, and his mum, he just went in and went, "Bye, guys." Like it's just so sad, and my heart just goes out to them. It's incredibly sad. The letter. John wrote 5 pages, 5 pages of confessions to his pastor. In it, he claimed that he killed his family to save their souls, believing that the world's immorality was dragging them towards damnation. He insisted God would forgive him, but he wasn't sure the family would be forgiven if they continued living in what he viewed as spiritual corruption. So what he's about to do, so him unaliving his entire family is totally cool, and God's just like, yep, you saved them. But these people had no idea what was happening, and he still took their lives. This was what makes the case so haunting. The murders were not solely driven by rage or impulse, but a distorted vision of religious duty and control. His vanishing. After killing his family, John walked out the door and disappeared. For an entire month, no one noticed anything unusual. The kids' teachers believed they were on an extended family trip. Neighbors thought the house was simply quiet, but as soon as the lights burned out, the police were alerted. On December 7th, 1971, they entered the mansion and discovered a horrifying scene. By then, John List was long gone. He traveled across the country, took a new identity, Robert Clark, and rebuilt his life. He remarried, joined a church, resumed teaching in Sunday school, and for 18 years he lived like an ordinary, respectable man. So he just gets to go and rebuild his life like nothing ever happened. And he took the lives of his children before they could even make a life for themselves, to make their own decisions. And it's just disgraceful. It's disgraceful. In 1989, the case was reviewed on America's Most Wanted. Forensic artist Frank Bender created an eerily accurate progressed bust of what List might look like after nearly 2 decades. Within 2 weeks, a neighbor recognized him. Good on that neighbor. Good on that neighbor. John List was finally arrested in Virginia. He denied everything at first, but the evidence was overwhelming. In 1990, John List was convicted of 5 counts of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to 5 consecutive life terms, ensuring he would never be free again. Even in custody, he showed almost no remorse. He insisted the murders were necessary, a twisted protection. List died in prison in 2008 at age 82. The case of John List remains one of the most chilling family annihilation cases in American history, not only for the brutality of the murders, but the cold precision of the plan, the religious justification, and the near-perfect disappearance that followed. Books, dramas, and podcasts continue to revisit the story. The house itself changed ownership several times, forever shadowed by the events of 1971. What drove a man who seemed so ordinary to destroy the very people he was supposed to protect? And how many similar cases lurk behind quiet suburban doors today? If you'd like a more deep dive, hit subscribe and let me know which cases you'd like next. Now, I'm gonna go into a bit of a, I guess, say, deep dive into his letters. Unfortunately, the letters are not on public view. Like, you can't just Google on the internet John List confession letters, they don't come up. But if you're looking into like books and stuff, then you can find them. And I scoured for too long to find like little even chunks. So the opening chunk or the opening explanation, he says, is from, excuse the pronunciation, to Reverend Eugene Rewinkle, November 9th, 1971. I'm so sorry to add this additional burden to your work. I know that what has been done is wrong, but I couldn't see any other solution. And then it continues, and we get small fragments of his stated motive for it. And I've got about 3 quotes here saying, "At least I'm certain that all have gone to heaven now. If things had continued, who knows if that would have been the case. If I knew that this would hurt me as much as it would hurt them, but I felt that it was my duty as a father to ensure their place in heaven." I couldn't let them go on. I couldn't let them suffer in this world any longer. I know that many would not understand that I felt necessary to relieve them of the pressure of this world. So mainly his fault because of like the financial burdens and stuff, because he was losing his jobs because of his character, and he's just like, nah. The man upstairs kind of like, it's got to be done. And it's so incredibly sad that these people had to lose their lives because, I mean, I'm not a psychologist. I don't have a degree or anything, but he was not fully, I don't think he was very aware of maybe what like his religion was telling him. Like he obviously had a very distorted view of this, so that's why he unfortunately took. I'm not excusing him at all. I could not excuse it. Like, I don't think what he did was okay, but he obviously was struggling a lot with what was going on, and he just like was like, religion brain on. And I'm not blaming the religion, I'm blaming the man who took parts of the religion and used them for his own gain, I guess, because he then went on to live for 18 years. He remarried. I'm not quite sure if he had kids. I could not find anything, but he remarried. He went back to teaching. Like, yeah. Anyway, continuing. So then it goes on to about like the financial collapse. Like, we would have been destitute. There was no one to turn to. I could not bear the thought of them begging for food and shelter. I was keeping up appearances, pretending to go to work every day, but the truth is, I had been unemployed for a long time. So he was pretending to go to work, like, all for the sake of keeping up appearances, and that is just mind-boggling. And then next he goes to talk on about his wife Helen. And Helen's illness had grown steadily worse. The cause, even though I did not speak of it, her condition deteriorated and I did not think she could handle what was coming. And that's just so incredibly sad for her because she was obviously very sick and stuff at the time. And yeah, he annihilated his family. And it's just devastating and so unbelievably sad. And then he then goes to talk on about his religious justifications. I knew what I would be doing would be committing one of the greatest sins by taking their life, but I prayed over it a long time and I felt that God would understand. I know that eventually I will be punished, but I had to save them first. That, for me, is a very contradictory line because he says, I know that I will eventually be punished, but then he gets to go and live 18 years while his wife and children pass away and they just, I mean, we don't know what's in the afterlife. They may have gone to heaven, but they could have wanted to continue on with their lives and he's just, taken that from them. And it's fucked. And then he talks about his children. The children were good and bright. They had so much potential. I could not let them go through that. And then he continues to talk about that God will forgive him, that the priest will forgive him, and then practical instructions. So this is what was found in court. So parts of his statements. I found a lot of these in just like media articles. So take what it is with a grain of salt, because sometimes the media can, it's like they change a lot of what's said, so I'm not quite sure if these are fully accurate because I can't access the court documents myself. So he says, please see that they were properly buried. Please forgive me for the hardship this will cause. I leave everything in God's hands. So that's kind of a very summarized story of the List family murders. This is my first episode. um, for Midnight Motives, and I will be going through a lot of different serial killers, crime, cults, things like that. I am in Australia, so I will be looking at trying to keep this very Australia based because I feel like there's not a lot of like media about it. But unfortunately, I mean, not unfortunately, there's not a lot of these kind of things that really are publicized in Australia, so it can be very hard to find accurate information. And like there's so much media about things that happen in America, so you'll probably find a lot of my content will be on possibly those who have been done before, but I'll be taking a bit more of an analytical approach to it just because I am a student at university and this will be a sort of a way for me to learn and use what I'm learning in a practical way. But the main thing is it would really help me if people would like and subscribe so that I can try and build a channel for my midnight motives so that I am able to go to Europe. But the other main thing that I want this channel to be for is keeping the victim stories alive because yes, we are talking about, the people who committed these atrocities, but I think it's also really important to keep telling the victim stories so that they're always remembered and that they're not just like lost in the constant media of the people who committed the murders. So I will end the video there and I will see you next time. Have a good rest of your night, day, wherever you are, but that is all for now.